Good evening and thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I'm your host, Grevazio Zulu. Now, Zambia has had so many discussion points in the past 1 week, ranging from social to economic issues. But one issue that has stood out is that of gay rights, coming at the back of a court judgment sentencing a gay couple to 15 years in prison. This was followed by a sharp reaction by the United States ambassador to Zambia, stating that the sentence was too harsh. But this raised fears that maybe relations between Zambia and the US had been strained, and probably that Zambia's image had been dented abroad. My guest this evening on the program is Zambia's ambassador to Germany, His Excellency Anthony Mukwita. He also speaks to developments in missions abroad. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Mr. Zulu, and thanks to the Zambian viewers this evening.
It's always nice to have you back on the program. Can you tell us the purpose for your visit to Zambia this time around?
This time around, I came accompanying a high-level delegation from the government and the Chancellery of Austria. As you know, Austria is one of the countries that the Embassy of Zambia in Berlin, Germany oversees. Austria is one of the AAA rated countries with a population of 8 million people and almost a $500 billion GDP. So having said that, it seems explicitly clear that they have a lot to offer in terms of diplomacy and economics. They used to have a physical presence, a fully fledged mission in Zambia up until about 1989. And they are now looking at trying to see whether they can expand their footprint in Africa. Because at the moment they have an embassy in Nairobi, Kenya, which is overlooking at about 10 countries, including Zambia. And they have also a presence in South Africa. But you know, Zambia has always been a very, very attractive destination, both for business and for diplomacy. So through our honorary council, because that's how we have our representation right now, through our honorary council, Mr. Heinz Messenger, we had organized a trip, which was pretty high level. Remember, from 1989, it's almost about 31 years. We came to see Her Honor, the Vice President of the Republic of Zambia, Madam Inongewena. It was such a privilege and honor put together by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our Permanent Secretary and our Minister. So we had these talks so that they could see how we could recalibrate discussions on the possibilities of much closer engagement than we've had since 1989 at a physical level.
So you have this huge delegation you've come with. What exactly are they focusing on? What are they looking at? You've been around with them.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, Brother Grevazio. They have various areas of interest in Zambia. They are looking at whether they can engage economically with Zambia in the renewable energy sector. Austria is one of the countries that is very big in the energy sector, not just energy, but renewable energy, of which there is much greater potential in Zambia because of what we always talk about, you and I, 365 days of sunshine, which you cannot beat. And this is a very opportune time because of the climatic change that is going on right now in our part of the region and many other parts. You're talking about Southern Africa, you are talking about Italy, you are talking about India. There is all these climatic changes that are affecting people very negatively. So Austria is got a great interest in that. The second one that they are interested in is health. They are also very great in health. As you know, they have some of the longest lifespans, not just in the world, but in that part of Europe. So, for instance, we came in Zambia in July to look at 3 main areas in the health sector. To look at the pediatrics, which is children, and to look at the women's health, which is maternal, and to look at the cancer center. We had high-level meetings with the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Health, the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Finance, And we also had high-level meetings with the chief executive of the University Teaching Hospital, including the director at the Cancer Center, Dr. Kennedy Lishimpi. The purpose for this was that the Austrian are looking at seeing how they can help us rehabilitate the cancer center in order to reduce the number of people that are dying needlessly from this silent killer. The Austrian government, through a company called AME International, are also looking at how we can reduce the number of babies that are dying at birth, especially the premature births. Because when we toured the pediatrics ward, especially the premature section, we found that it was built about 20, 30 years ago to take care of at least 50 babies. But now that number has doubled, meaning there is a lot of pressure on the equipment that is used to keep these Zambian babies alive. So for instance, with 100 babies, we found there was only about 10 incubators, which is unacceptable. And the doctors there who give their day in a life to save these babies are under pressure because they cannot do what these machines do. We found that, for instance, in this room, which is supposed to be warmed up with state-of-art machinery, there is a heater which has to be switched on and off. We found that where there is supposed to be a distance of at least a meter for the babies to be kept safe, that meter is not there. They are back to back, and this allows for cross-infection.
What are we looking at when we talk about these people coming into the country, looking at all these areas, looking at the health, looking at the UTH, the Cancer Diseases Hospital, energy? Are we talking loans, grants, assistance?
That's very interesting, Brother Grevasio. What we're talking about is, because you know the president of the government of President Edgar Lungu has been implementing austerity measures, which has meant that you've had to cut down on costs, and the International Monetary Fund has advised, and the government itself has come up with this advice that we should reduce spending, and we should also reduce engaging in financing that is commercial. So when we're talking about Austria, when we're talking about Germany, we are talking about non-concessional financing packages. Austria, for instance, with the company called AME, want to help rehabilitate the cancer center, want to help reduce the death of babies in the pediatrics, using government-to-government financing with zero interest rate financing over a long period of time, between 10 years and 15 years. You can't beat that. But they have huge resources, and they are willing to do this. As I speak to you right now, it's not just an expression of interest. They want MOUs, and they want statements of commitment to be done before Christmas, so that by next year we can see Dr. Lishimpi, we can see my older sister at the Ministry of Health smiling, because they will see that there is rehabilitation going on in the pediatrics ward. They will see that there is rehabilitation going on in the women's ward, and they will see that there is rehabilitation and expansion going on in the cancer center. Mind you, the cancer center, they don't want only to rehabilitate and do equipment, but also to train the doctors. The other great thing about this is UTH Cancer Center now becomes a hub for the region. People stop traveling going to India, people stop traveling going to South Africa, people stop traveling going to other parts of the world. They start coming to Zambia. So that zero interest rate government-to-government financing pays for itself.
Others would argue that this still is a loan.
Excuse me, please.
And people are against loans now. They feel,
yes,
probably as a country we have overborrowed.
No. We haven't. I always differ with lots of people when they say this, because there is two types of borrowing. There is borrowing for consumption, and there is borrowing for production. And there is also commercial borrowing, and there is zero interest rated borrowing, which is what you and I are talking about. And the one that we are talking about right now, especially towards health, is one which you're engaging to ensure that instead of 100 babies dying out of every 1,000 that are born, only maybe 2 or 3 die. Even they should not die at all. But if you are going to get a government-to-government zero-rated interest financing to save babies from dying, to save mothers from dying while they are giving birth, and to save people dying from communicable diseases, I personally think it is something that you need to do, because we need to grow a population, and also we need
worth the risk, you would say?
Sorry?
Worth the risk of accumulating more
No, I wouldn't even call it a risk. I wouldn't call it a risk. I think it's worth the challenge to go on, because you are doing it for the greater good of your country.
You raised an issue on energy with Austria and discussing with them. Are we close to any deal on that as well?
We are starting this. From what I experienced, Brother Grevasio, the discussion that the high-level delegation, which was taken by the Secretary General in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Austria, Dr. Johannes Peterlich, and our Vice President, the second most important person in the government of Zambia after President Edgar Lungu, I felt pretty confident that we could move to something very positive, because she basically threw the gauntlet. She basically flung the doors open to the Austrian delegation that the time is ripe now for investment in the energy sector, because legislation is in the process to ensure that it is cost effective, and that for every $5 that you put in, at least you are able to get back maybe another $2 or $3 in the past. In future than in the past, when investing in energy in Zambia was not profitable at all. And the time is ripe now, because yourself and myself are feeling the pinch. I recall the statement of the President, Mr. Edgar Lungu, in the State of the Nation address, when he spoke about Bob the welder closing up his welding company because there is long hours of power shortages. I recall the President talking about Sarah, the saloon owner, closing up her saloon because the long hours of power shortages. I recall the President talking about people in the agriculture sector suffering the same. You suffer the same. So because of this shortage, people in business in Austria, in Germany, have a right opportunity to come in now. I know it appears very bad that we have 800 or 900 megawatt shortage of energy in power in Zambia due to climate change. But what I say out there is this 800 megawatt shortage also means that there is 800 reasons to invest in Zambia.
You're speaking about Austria. Let's look at the response from Germany. I mean, you've been talking about it. We've spoken about it as a country that we are on some deal.
Yes,
with some company to come and help us set up some solar power plants.
That's interesting, Brother Grevasio. And again, Germany has been an all-weather friend. I'm sure you know my colleague, Ambassador Bukat here. They have been doing a lot of work, especially in the water sector. They have invested about $10 million through UNICEF in water reticulation, especially in the refugee areas, to ensure that people have clean water. Not just refugees, but the people that host the refugees. Now, coming to climate change and coming to this power shortage that we are having, you will recall that also when the President made his statement, he talked about $100 million. That is coming from the Development Ministry of Germany, who are investing about 100 million euros, actually, I'm sorry, I said dollars earlier, 100 million euros in order to ensure that Zambia gets about 100 megawatts. Energy is expensive. 100 megawatts is a lot of energy, especially sustainable and in the renewable sector. And they have already shortlisted, I think at the last count that I checked, I may have to verify this, they have shortlisted 10 companies that will engage into this project. This will mean that where we had nothing at all, where we had a shortage of 800, we will now probably have a shortage of about 700, because this is not the only thing happening, but this is only happening with Germany, which you have asked about. And this is a very, very great thing, because this is long term. We have 365 days of sunshine, and this will also create jobs at the process that it's being taken advantage of. And this will ensure that come climate change or not, we will still be able to have some energy which is clean and which is sustainable, which will also mean that there will be increased productivity.
So do you see a solution in the nearest future?
Yes, because the project is already on the plate. I think from what I am understanding is the delay is now just on the part of the Zambian government.
There's usually this complaint of bureaucracy delaying projects, and sometimes, for lack of a better way, destroying them completely, scattering them away. Do you face such challenges when you bring in investors like that?
Yes, there is this concern that sometimes we don't move as fast as we would like to move. So, for instance, when I came with the team from Austria, we had already been around here in July, and we had already done an inventory of what kind of equipment would be needed, say, for the children's ward and for the mother's ward and for the cancer center. And we were hoping that this time around, when we came to see Her Honor the Vice President, we would probably be signing a non-finance commitment MOU, and we didn't do that. And that is needed to unlock that cheap long-term financing. So sometimes the investors get a little frustrated. The money is available, but there is a signature that is missing on the part of our country, which is good, because the country...
So clearly then we are speaking in efficiency and not
I wouldn't call it...
we don't need it that much.
We do need...
We're not hungry for this development, not hungry for this for these MOUs and investments that are supposed to be coming in.
We do need it. All the words that you are saying are correct, but the wheels of the state, I understand that they have to move at a certain pace, because there is certain legalities that you look at. So, for instance, if you have to sign an MOU as a Ministry of Health or as a Ministry of Finance, it still has to go through the Auditor General's office, and they have to give their
Attorney General
legal... Yes, thank you very much. The Attorney General's office. So they still have to look at certain legalities. But I am hoping that some of these things can be expedited. Because when you delay an MOU for the pediatrics ward, every day that you delay means one baby is dying. You delay an MOU for the cancer center means that every day that you are doing, there is this other infection that goes untreated. You delay an MOU for the mother's ward, it means these mothers that gave birth and needed immediate attention die and probably leave a baby alive who dies later on. So I am just thinking that maybe there is a need to expedite on certain issues in order to save money, especially under austerity measures. Because the government, I know, means very, very well when they talk about cutting down spending. But cutting down spending also means making decisions quickly enough in order to save lives, and also in order to reduce the spillage and the hemorrhage on national resources.
Let's look at other economic development highlights in the countries that you're representing. I know you represent quite a number of them. Austria is just one of them. Poland is another. Germany and others. What other highlights do you have in the developmental highlights?
We have education. So, for instance, Austria is looking at seeing if the Ministry of Higher Education can engage them to send expertise which they will pay for here. There is also another MOU which still hasn't been signed. We have in Germany, as you have already said, there is an agreement in the renewable energy sector, which is very crucial because this has reduced productivity on a very high level. We have right now, upcoming in January, is a very, very crucial month, next month in Germany, the Green Week. All ministers of agriculture from all over the world come to Germany and converge in there to discuss how agriculture and food production can be enhanced. I am hoping that the government of Zambia, our government, will send a representative, but if they don't, that's why we are there, we will do. The last time we had a representation from a minister during the Green Week was when Honorable Dora Selia was minister. It was great to have her there. She did a marathon tour of various discussions on that. This is a place where technology and new ideas regarding food production are always discussed, and it's always going to be good. We have also coming up in March, the biggest tourism event. As you may know, President Edgar Lungu recently escalated or rather elevated the Ministry of Tourism and Arts to a ministry that should be financial generating. So in Berlin, more than 110 countries converge every year in March.
But are you doing enough as diplomats, maybe I should ask, to market the country? Do we have enough tourists coming in? I know we're lagging behind other countries. If you compare Kenya, Rwanda, I think the numbers, Zambian numbers are not as good.
You have mentioned countries that are investing quite huge resources in advertising their countries. Kenya is a tourism money-making machine. They invest a lot of money in advertising and letting people know that theirs is a big tourism destination. So is Rwanda. But at the moment, remember, we have these austerity measures because certain things have not been working very well. So we are not putting in as much in adverts. So for instance, I understand it can cost between 100, maybe 200 million for a 20 or 30-minute advert on CNN to advertise your country. And those are resources which I think are scarce because we are trying to prioritize what to spend on. But Zambia has a much, much bigger incentive for tourists to come than any of these other countries that are spending huge monies, that are splashing these huge amounts, because we have been known as a beacon of peace. We have been known as the last bastion of stability. So tourists always want to go to a place where they know they will be safe. Tourists want to go to a place where they know there is no bomb that is going to explode while they're at the supermarket. So we still have that, and I can assure you that, for instance, Germans, they're big spenders. It's Europe's richest country right now. They are increasingly coming. We are seeing the numbers at the embassy rising of German tourists coming. We are seeing that this could improve even further if we get a bit aggressive. And we are, because we have, I know that in Germany consistently we have been participating in the ITB Berlin, and thanks to my big brother, Mr. Felix Chaila, he's been making sure that we always have a presence there, including 2018 when we were actually culture partners. Now, you know what that means, Mr. Zulu, as being culture partners? It means you are more present in this place called the Messe Berlin that 100,000 people pass through for the whole week. It means that you have more exposure of people coming in to come and see whether they can come to Zambia or not. And we have been there. And it's a much, much sought out for space. So we can't afford to miss any ITB Berlin, because it's the world's largest tourism event.
Expo.
Yeah.
Now let's look at. Would you say economic diplomacy is working now? Looking at what you're doing, I know Zambia has had a shift from political to economic diplomacy. In your assessment, would you say it's now working? It's bearing fruit?
I think I would say that it is. I will give you an example that appears purely malignant or even harmless. Look at the number of flights that are coming into Zambia. I think South African Airways has between 11 and 13 flights coming into Zambia every day. You can go to Johannesburg at 7 o'clock in the morning and you can come back at 22 hours. You can basically make 2-3 trips. You have Turkish Airlines is coming to Lusaka, Zambia. You have Emirates has always been coming. You have the Ethiopian Airlines has always been coming. You have almost all major airlines in Zambia coming. People think that this is just people flying. No, this is economic diplomacy. These people are flying into Zambia and out of Zambia for a reason. I fly a lot, so I see these full planes and I realize that there is something, there is a honeypot. We're probably sitting on a pot of gold and we probably maybe just do not realize. But all
which
this
we
is
are not
part
seeing.
Of
we are probably Zambians are the only ones not seeing the gold.
Sometimes you don't
something to do with
appreciate
cultural attitude.
Sometimes you don't appreciate what you have got because you live around it. It's something they call standing too close to the elephant, because all you see is this gray skin. You need to step back a little bit in order to see everything else. But there is a lot happening. I can tell you, when I was coming to ZNBC this morning, I was going through this flyover road and beautiful buildings around, which I didn't see in July. That's July, August, September, October, November, December. In 5 months, I have seen so much development that you do not see because you live around here. So you've been standing very close to the elephant. But when I've been moving all around, even in the compounds and things like that, I'm just seeing these buildings sprouting up. I am seeing much more, you know, shopping malls coming up. And I know something is happening. It's not probably the optimum, because in every society there is still the poor and there's still those that do better than the others, and in every society there is still the good and the bad.
Yeah. Now, you are probably coming at the right time. I don't know, maybe I could say you've come at a time when Zambia's great reputation in the eyes of the international community appears to really suffered a bit of diplomatic attacks, specifically the brush with the U.S. Embassy. I did mention it in the introduction that there are fears now that probably Zambia's relations with the U.S. are now strained. What's your take on that?
I hesitate again to really comment on that, but it's a very interesting question. The reason I hesitate, with your indulgence, is because the president of Zambia has already spoken to the issue and the Minister of Foreign Affairs have already done. So I can simply walk through what they have already said. And what they have said is that Zambia has its own culture, which must be respected. Zambia has its own religion that must be respected. And Zambia has its own norms, just like every other country is. And as a diplomat, I will also speak to the Vienna Convention, which means that we have our own sovereignty, which must be respected. I think there is also a saying that if you can't stand for anything, then you can fall for anything. So I think the president of Zambia, Mr. Edgar Lungu, showed real leadership and strength when he spoke about Zambia being a really religious country, a Christian nation that observes certain values, and that he would not sway the other way just because he is going to get aid or not get aid. So I think anybody wanting to judge Zambia has to look at what Zambia stands for. And that is, this is a country that has stood for peace and stability. We have a lot more to be proud of, than that which we have to beat ourselves off. We have an undisrupted record of 55 years of peace and stability. We have a very good record of a judicial system that has been known to work. We have a very good record of an electoral system that has seen 6 presidents since independence get into office and out of office. We have a great record of having a court system where people can seek recourse. So
you're talking about a strong judicial system, but these are the issues that the U.S. ambassador spoke to and said really he didn't see harsh punishments towards corruption, towards other evils that were robbing the public of resource, and yet he saw this harsh punishment on this issue he thought wasn't as big.
That's why I
questioning the judiciary in a way.
Indeed, that's why I say the Vienna Convention is really very clear on how you deal with such matters. And for me, when such an issue rises, I always try to look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. I think we look at what we do good the most than that little thing that may appear as if it makes us, it gives us a bad image. Look, we are a country that has been accepting refugees from neighboring countries and others from even far beyond since 1964. Have we ever gotten a pat on the back for that? I think we should look at that which unites us more, that makes us more gracious than others that make us look bad. And also, while saying that, I want to say that we are not a perfect country, and there is no perfect country. And I hesitate to talk about the ills or the shortcomings of other countries, including those that may judge us, because they are many. But the laws that are put in place in diplomacy limit me on what we can say, especially when the minister has already spoken and when the president has already spoken.
Let's
That's
on
why
this
I'm
issue.
concentrating
I know
on
that the issue that
stuff,
brought up this part and this friction, if I may call it that, was the issue of gay rights. And this gay rights and rights of lesbians and gays is a growing issue in Western countries, and there's been a lot of push and pressure to have African countries accept these rights as rights that should be fundamental and respected. Are you facing that pressure? You're in a Western country representing Zambia.
Let me just say, what's good for the goose should probably be good for the gander. You know that, for instance, in the United States, if I may be allowed to push the envelope, I think President Trump has made it clear that there has to be limitations on how far you go with LGBT, including in the people in uniforms and several other government officials. And I am Zambian, working under President Edgar Lungu, and if you Google right now 5 things that you should know about President Edgar Lungu, one thing he has unequivocally said, which we think we must follow. One thing that he has unequivocally said is that Zambia shall not tolerate gay rights, because he thinks that it is not part of our culture. And I think it has to be respected.
Are you getting the pressure?
No.
I mean you're in these countries that really, some of the countries.
Not really, because you know why we don't get the pressure? Because we walk back to whoever we talk to. We tell them that this is the position of our laws and this is the position of our president. So we are supported. We are supported by the law, and we are supported by the statements, the policy statements of our president. Look, we have countries talking about gay rights that kill people via lethal injection, that hang people to death until they are proven, to have died, that kill people.
We have the same standard. Well, we don't do by
we
lethal.
Don't do it.
Lethal, but we've got that on the statutes.
We have got it on the statutes, but there is no president that has been killing people since 1991. In fact, President Edgar Lungu was commended by Amnesty International for commuting to life about 300 people. We have it on the laws, but President Edgar Lungu won't kill nobody. We have it on the statutes, but President Rupia Banda didn't kill anybody. We have it on the statutes. President Levi Mwanawasa didn't kill anybody. And we have presidents who have been commuting death sentences, who have been removing people from death row and commuting their lives. So I always say we have a lot of good going on than bad. And I always say we should pat ourselves on the backs a little bit. Zambia is a great country. Zambia is a country where when you are abroad, you are proud to represent, because people will tell you that have not even been to Zambia. When they see your flag and the lapel, and when you talk to them, they say, oh, I've heard very great things. I've heard about the Victoria Falls. I've heard about the weather. I've heard about your democratic credentials. So no country is utopia. No country is perfect. But we just have to deal with what we have. And you know, in diplomatic relations that you have just mentioned, there will always be friction. It's like in a family. I mean, there is friction between brothers and sisters. There is friction between wife and husband. There is friction between cousins and dozens. So there will always be frictions. But
do you think Zambia's image has suffered?
I don't think so. I absolutely do not think so. I mean, there are countries that are at conflict. There are countries where human rights for people are taken away. There are countries where babies are dying because a bomb has exploded. There are countries where there has been conflict for 10 and 20 years. There are countries where people have been stopped from entering a country. There are countries where people have been caged at a border. We don't do that in Zambia. People come here when they are running away from conflict. People seek solace in this country. This is a country that has seen 6 democratic elections.
Yes, this is a country, peace, and that's probably not anything anybody can argue about.
Indeed.
But then let's look at, you're saying the image is intact. But then when when you look at statements such as the one which came from the U.S. ambassador to Zambia, talking about expressing concern about lack of movement on corruption and other issues. Shouldn't that concern you? He probably is not the only representative speaking like that.
Again, I hesitate. I yield back to comment on that. Like I said earlier, the president has spoken on that and the minister has spoken on that. But let's take the U.S. ambassador out of it. But then let's look at these statements like there's too much corruption, there's not enough punishment for corrupt people, there's too much spillage or is it leakage of public finance and resources. You ask tough questions.
Isn't this effective?
You ask tough questions, Mr. Zulu, but I have some equally tough answers for you. And the president has shown that he will not tolerate corruption. The government has shown that they will not tolerate corruption. He has fired cabinet ministers publicly. He has parted company with friends. He has parted company with people whom he has known for a long time, keen supporters. He has suspended directors, and he has opened up every public official for investigations. This has not been seen in many African countries, but in such a short time that he's been around, there has been real action when there has been seen. Perhaps people do not want to appreciate this, but I can tell you that the levels at which he has acted to correct the wrongs or the suspicions on graft are much higher than other African countries, even Western countries. And you know, people will say, but why are you talking about other countries? But we need to compare ourselves to others. There are public and political statements in other countries, but we have a president who has opened the cashier, who has thrown the gauntlet to the Drug Enforcement Commission, to the Anti-Corruption Commission, to the police, and say, investigate everybody. You know, I don't want to name names. I don't want to do name or shame, but you know that there is people who have been arrested and investigated. You know that there is people who have been fired. You know that there is people that have resigned. You know that the people that have been suspended. And you know that there has been public statements that have been made whenever there has been a corrupt allegation. and you know that this is not only happening in Zambia. That does not justify it, but it does happen. I can't name countries. It happens in the West. It happens in the East.
Is there a justification in the statement that probably the people that face graft charges are treated with kids' gloves?
I don't think so. I think
with some level of sympathy.
I think when there has been evidence, the gavel has always fallen. Perhaps not fast enough, but this is because the nature of graft itself is it's a hidden crime. So it needs a little bit of forensics. It needs a little bit of intense investigations. So
it takes time, like you would say.
Yes,
give me your personal experience. I know you're a representative of the country abroad, and what is it like? Do you have this free will to speak about issues in that country?
That's interesting.
I mean, this has always been a debate in Zambia. This ambassador is meddling and this one is meddling in the affairs of the country. How was your experience like?
I can tell you.
Have you been cited for meddling maybe before as well?
No, we stick in our lane. We know that the diplomatic rules, the conventions are very, very clear. We are not supposed to meddle in directly or personally into the affairs of the countries that host us. I am very happy to be in Germany. We meet the president of Germany twice every year. There is about 100 ambassadors in Berlin. We meet twice in the year. We meet in January and we meet in about September collectively. Not even on a one-on-one. I am very happy that we meet the Chancellor also once a year.
Now, do you think Zambia's image has been tainted as a result of what has been happening, as a result of the incident with the U.S. ambassador?
I don't think so. I think those that want to do diplomatic engagement, those that want to do business in Zambia, look at the issue holistically. They look at Zambia as a country that has great democratic credentials, a country that has had 6 elections without spilling blood, a country that has a president that actually once gave up power in order to win it back. They look at a country that has been receiving refugees unequivocally without, regarding of where they are coming from. Since 1964, for 55 years. They look at a country that accepts people even in their diversity. They look at a country that is steadily moving forward and making improvements in the judicial system, in the business system, and reducing the number of days that you can set up a business. They look at a great country. And I think, Brother Grevasio, I always say this, that we probably do not say much about how good this country is.
Well, the sentiments on the other side, you would say the image is okay, but sentiments, if I could pick from that statement of the ambassador, maybe it looks, the concerns are more like corruption, lack of action thereof on these issues, and where probably corrupt people or elements are treated lightly. With
all these issues you are raising, Brother Grevasio, do exist in other countries, and it's work in progress. Zambia is not a perfect country. I hope I did not come out saying that it is perfect, it's utopian. It has these issues just like several other countries I cannot name have, probably even at a much higher level. But I think what is great about Zambia, because I can competently speak on that, because I am Zambian, I work for Zambia, and I am proud to be a Zambian, is the fact that our leadership, especially under our president, Edgar Lungu himself, has shown that they will try and make corrections. It's work in progress. They will make corrections wherever these ills do arise. You have a president who has allowed the institutions of investigation, such as the Drug Enforcement Commission, such as the Anti-Corruption Commission, to act when they feel they have enough evidence. The reason, I think, which you have mentioned that they were a bit slow, is it's very hard to get evidence in these crimes because they are on a mutual basis. One is gaining and the other is gaining. So for you to get evidence, concrete evidence, is a little bit hard, just like everywhere else, especially with white-collar crimes. But to say that this country has completely blinded itself to ills. I think it's pretty unjustified compared to the great things that the leadership and the country and the people of Zambia. Zambian people are very great people. You know, you only realize this when you are abroad, when you are somewhere else. When you hear the harrowing stories from people from other countries, then it looks like a kindergarten for Zambia.
Now, let me get your practical experience living outside there and representing the country. Do you have, how much space do you have to comment, criticize governments that you?
Oh no, we don't do that. We stick to our lane, and our headquarters, our ministry, our permanent secretary, Mr. Chalwe Lombe, Dr. Simwinga, our Minister Malanji, they tell us straight on from the very beginning, and our training, our diplomatic training also tells us that we have to stick into our lane. This is the Vienna Convention. You respect the sovereignty of the country in which you are doing representation. And you know, me, I am happy, and I can say this personally, that German is an all-weather friend. They have been very good to us. I think we have received up to about $1 billion in the last years that we have been with them in aid, and it continues to go on. And what I like to always talk about is the great things that we share.
Does this speak to difference in strengths? These countries are strong countries with a lot of money being pumped into Zambia, and probably they have more say.
I wouldn't say that. I think we speak
more
about
say on their monies, more say on how we apply the donations they give.
It's reciprocal. I know you will say that blessed is the hand that giveth than the one that taketh, but it's reciprocal. Everyone who is in Zambia because they need Zambia, and everybody who is out of Zambia in other countries is because they need the other countries. The world is becoming a global village. That's why you will hear, Brother Grevasio, from time to time now, and even probably more constantly, about a win-win situation. So we are going there. It's a relationship, and it's work in progress. Sometimes somebody is seen to be a little higher up on the what, and that's why sometimes somebody seems to be a little bit lower. That's why you hear things of countries being in a trade war, for instance. One raises tariffs, the other says they will also raise another tariff. But it's all work in progress. Every time, eventually, there comes an equilibrium. And I think that's where we are at.
Don't countries that give more have more say?
Give more what?
Don't they have say on the money they give?
Well, there is always conditionalities that are tied. I think in answering that question, again, I will walk you back to our president, Mr. Edgar Lungu, who said, we appreciate aid. We might not have as much as you do, but we will not accept to have anything repugnant imposed on us. We will not have anything that we do not feel is part of our culture imposed on us just because we don't have as much money as you have. I think there is much more strength in standing your ground than to accept anything. And I think I will walk you back to the statement I made earlier that you have to stand for something or else you will fall for anything. And the president has shown this kind of stubbornness, if I may use the term.
So in your eyes, the image of the nation, the image of the president still stands?
The image of President Edgar Lungu is very intact. There probably hasn't been a time that it is more intact than
despite
now.
All these issues on governance,
because the strengths outweigh the strengths outweigh the negatives. I have told you about, there's a place where 5-year-old babies are pulled out of a rubble because there was a bomb that exploded. I've told you about places where people are caged at a border because they cannot be allowed. I've told you about places where women are not allowed to dress in a certain fashion, but those things are not pertaining to this country. So I think what makes Zambia as a people, what makes Zambia as a country, and what makes President Lungu as a president outweighs the things that one or two people may complain about. I have not said that we are a perfect society. I have not said that we are a perfect country. But I said we have a lot more to be proud of than to beat ourselves on.
Than to be negative about.
Now, we have to, you know, it's sad, Brother Grevasio, that, you know, many people would like to say, no, you know, Zambia, you know, this and this and this. You get stuck in this rut of negativity instead of one of optimism. Instead of saying, my glass is half full, some people want to say, my glass is half empty. And I actually feel doubly sad that people want to measure themselves using an alien yardstick instead of using our own yardstick.
Local yardstick.
Yeah.
Now, as we wind down the interview, I'll ask you two questions that I'd love you to talk about. I know that last evening, 2 days ago, you were at a launch of your book you've done about the president. How was it?
It was great. At the University of Zambia, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Luke Mumba, was gracious enough when I was in Zambia in July to say that there is a donation that you have made, and we want you to make an official donation because we feel the history that has been created through your book of our president must be celebrated. It must be enshrined in our library and must talk about. So I had a great time yesterday with the university students where we did this launch, and the speech was read on behalf of the Vice Chancellor that we must all contribute to the body of language in writing on Zambia. And also I mentioned that this book is now even being stocked by Ivy League universities such as Stanford University. So I'm glad you raised this issue. ZNBC was around. By the way, allow me also to just say that I have observed that there's been a change in management at the Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation. Mr. Malolela is the new Director General, and I would like to humbly congratulate him for the new job, and also to thank my older brother, Mr. Richard Manza, who left.
You're a media person, and recently the president had a media engagement, and then he broke this press engagement spell and mingled with the media. What is your view on that?
I loved that. I watched it live from my office in Berlin, and I think the president outdid himself, and he must be allowed to engage a little bit more. There is a saying that everybody needs 5 minutes with the president, and he did more than an hour with the media and spoke to the issues that affect lots of Zambians. And I think people, instead of speculating, want to talk directly to the boss from time to time and hear him make the sentiments. It makes a difference when I hear something from a government official at a certain level compared to when I hear it from the president himself. I actually did a little analytical piece on it, and the example I gave was when you are flying, when you are in a plane and there is turbulence, you are always calmed when you hear a voice saying, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain, Grevasio Zulu. I would like to tell you that even though we are having a little bit of turbulence, this will be all right in the next 5 or 10 minutes. And I think, in a nutshell, that's what the president did.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Very much. Thanks.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was the Zambia's ambassador to Germany, Mr. Anthony Mukwita. We will be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewing.